Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. This week I am continuing on with my Italian Renaissance gown, my Borgias gown, and I am picking up pretty much right where I left off last week. So if you have not seen the previous vlogs on this video, I will link a playlist right up here. You might want to go check those out first. It's also linked down in the description just in case you want to watch this one before you watch the previous ones. But where we are right now is that I have a bodice behind me, and I have skirts waiting to get attached to that bodice. And where I left off last week was that I was planning to add as much as possible more to the skirts from the fabric that I have left. And in doing that, I mocked up the sleeves last week and I was ready to cut out the sleeves and then put the remaining part in that skirt. So I'm cutting out the sleeves right now. That's going splendid. No worries there. By the time I cut out all of the sleeve pieces, I'm not going to have any length left to put in that skirt. I thought I was going to have like 15 inches, which was not going to be very much, not really going to make a difference to the width of that skirt anyway, but I am literally laying everything out right now. I have already cut out one of my really big poofy sleeve pieces, and I've got the mock-ups for like the fitted sleeve pieces, because if you didn't watch those other videos, I'm making two different sleeve versions that can both be put on this gown. One with a big poofy sleeve that is more 1530s and then a fitted lower, and then one that has like the fitted pieces that have the little ties together and they tie into the arms eye and everything. So yeah, I'm making those two options because I am planning to wear this for years to come at the Ren Fair and I want to make it look different every time I wear it. Yeah, I've got everything laid out right now. And the poofy sleeves would have left me 15 inches, but in laying out the pieces of the fitted sleeve, they are going to take up more than the width of one poofed sleeve, which was what I was hoping that they would fit into, and they're not, which means that that like 15 inches that I had is not actually going to wind up being long enough to fit into the skirt. Probably short 6 inches, like we're so close, but yeah, it's not gonna fly. So I guess the skirt's gonna be as is. I'm gonna finish cutting out those sleeve pieces right now so that we can start working on the sleeves. I am hoping to maybe have some hand sewing to do at my show this weekend, and I'm thinking that the sleeves are the most likely place, but at the same time, honestly, I feel like everything that I need to do on them is machine sewing, because I would rather machine sew than hand sew in general. But yeah, I need to get everything cut out. So if I can get myself to where I can do a hem, great, I'll just bring the whole gown with me to backstage and I will work on that hem. And I guess if I'm not gonna add in any more to the skirt, then we're pretty much already there anyway, and I just need to finish pleating up the skirt to the bodice and actually sew that on, try it on, mark the hem, etc. So yeah, I'm gonna finish cutting out the sleeve pieces first, and then we'll look at if there's any chance that we can add more to the skirt. I think there's like 0.1% chance that I can, but let's see how things go. Frankly, this is why I thought those other 4 pieces would all fit within one puffed sleeve piece. It's because they're huge. So yeah, these are cut out. Now to cut out the little ones. Okay, it's actually even worse than I thought. Don't worry, I can still get all my sleeve pieces out, but I thought that I was going to have enough width for one of those like big puff sleeves to cut 3 pieces out, as in both upper arms plus one lower arm. No, because basically this little section that sticks out right here, that's what's left of like where those sleeves were, and I still have to get both lower arms out. So all the lower arm pieces, all 2 of them, are going to have to come out of this length, which would have gone into the skirt. Obviously it was not very wide to begin with, so it's not like I'm really lacking much, but we're going to have very little fabric of this left. Hopefully there's enough to incorporate into some sort of like a headpiece. In this era, I think this is in Venice, but maybe this happened in multiple places, this little roundy headpiece thing, I don't know what it's called, but this sort of thing was very common. And so I was kind of thinking of wanting to do one of these. That said, those are puffy, which means they are bad for packing. So I don't know that I would have taken one of those to Ireland anyway. I think we'll have to figure out what I am doing headpiece wise for Ireland for this, because that does not seem very packable, one of those poofy things. So it's not a huge deal if I don't have enough left for a headpiece. And I mean, at the Ren Fair, let's face it, you can wear anything. I could wear a flower crown or fairy wings or whatever and it'd be fine. But I was thinking about one of those headpieces, at least for the Ren Fair. So I'd love to have a little bit of fabric left of this. By the way, you're seeing the back. It's this, to be able to do for a headpiece. First, let's use our last little bit left to cut out our lower sleeves. Well, here is how much I have left after cutting out all of the sleeve pieces, but they are all cut out now. So now I have to figure out how that's going together. But honestly, I think I need the trim, and I need to know what trim I'm using to be able to know how those are going together. So I think I have to wait a little bit for the sleeves, because although I do have my little bit left of my beaded trim, which is enough to go either around the top of the lower sleeve or the bottom, and I also have this trim that I got from Amazon that I'm still really liking, even though it is a black base. I'm also really curious to see what these sleeves would look like with both a navy velvet trim, and my only navy velvet trim is this really wide one that I don't have very much of here. And then also I want to see what it would look like with a blue based narrower metallic jacquard ribbon. So I've got one of those coming. That is supposed to arrive on Saturday. I've got velvet ribbon coming also, and I am reordering more of the beaded trim that's going all around the neckline, because regardless of the other trim that I decide to use on these sleeves, and this is primarily for the fitted sleeves, I know that I want to basically have this along all of the edges, like along the wrist, along the top edge here, bottom edge here, I guess top edge up here as well, probably. I have to figure out how the lacing's gonna work with that. I think my silver trim that I got is going to be too wide for lacing, but I'm not positive yet. I wish that I had like a 1/4 inch wide version of this, but I can't find anything like that. So at this point, my plan is to use my little like 1/8 inch wide silver for lacing. I don't know how strong it is, but it doesn't seem to rip. And it's not like this is really like having tension put on it. It's just that it needs to hold all of the parts together. I don't know if I have enough on this spool. However, I looked up this Offray ribbon and found out that this is actually still available even at my local Walmart. So as much as I really do not like going to Walmart, I guess that's an option. They also have something really similar looking on Amazon. I think it's probably the exact same. It's just not Offray branded. So I do potentially have options for getting more of that if I don't have quite enough. I have no idea how much lacing this is going to require, but I kind of assume there's going to be like 3 points of lacing there, and then on each sleeve. So yeah, we have to figure that part out. I also have to look into my button stash and see if I have the buttons to put in like the lower fitted sleeve. But in any case, before the trims come from Amazon, I can't really make any of those decisions for the fitted sleeve. However, I can still work on the non-fitted sleeve, and obviously the next thing is going to be fixing the pleating on this and actually attaching that to the bodice. So that is my next step. Once that is done, I can put it on and hem it, and then we can also do the big puffed sleeve. The big puffed sleeve I am flat lining with cotton organdy. So my plan for this is that I am going to serge all of the edges of that, flat line that with the serger, and then do my gathering stitches, like seam it up on the, inner arm. And then once everything is gathered, I'm going to gather it into some sort of tape. Probably bias tape, maybe not, I'm not positive, but something that is going to basically confine it to the size of the armscye so that I can then whip stitch in the upper portion of the armscye, but the lower portion hangs loose, kind of like in this portrait right here. And then likewise, I think that the bottom of that poof is also going to be bound to a tape. I am not sure with these big puff sleeves if the lower portion of the sleeve was actually attached to it or not. Sometimes these big puff sleeves were completely fit into the armscye. They didn't leave the lower portion, but since I want my sleeves to be interchangeable, I feel like the more places they can interchange, probably the better, particularly since my plan is to use velvet for the lower portion of the puff sleeve A, that velvet's not here yet. B, velvet's kind of warm. So I think it might be good to be able to like trade that out with, you know, just this for the lower sleeve, though I mean, frankly, that's polyester, so they're gonna be warm either way. So yeah, a lot of questions still remaining about the sleeves. Hopefully by the time I'm done with the hem, we'll have trims arriving so we can kind of figure all of that out and actually put everything together. Well, the velvet ribbon that I ordered came, first off, it is really poor quality, but secondly, you know, this is supposedly navy. Obviously it's not navy, so that's getting returned. Thank you for improper labeling, Amazon. My skirt is attached. Look at that. I think it looks really nice. I do still have to press the pleats, but I did do it with knife pleats. I think they look great. So that means that I can go ahead and try this on and take a look at the hem, see how that goes. But also, like a few minutes ago, I thought I heard Amazon at the door. So I'm gonna see if the other trim that I ordered has arrived and how that might look. This looks really pretty. It's a little bit thinner than I had anticipated. Like, it doesn't feel like it's as nice of quality as the wider black trim, but honestly, that looks so pretty. And frankly, so does the back side where it's like more silver than blue. I think I like the actual side better, but I think this is going to be perfect for the fitted sleeves to kind of just put all over. And it wasn't a bad price either. It says it's 7 yards. That doesn't really look like 7 yards to me, so I might measure it. But yeah, it was like $8 or $9, I think. And yeah, that looks so pretty. So I'm definitely going to be using this. Hopefully this one package of it is enough. But yeah, I think that will work perfectly. She's looking really great. I'm really loving just like the fit and the look, the trim, the everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and pin up my hem, and that way I'll be able to bring it to the show tonight and work on it backstage this weekend. But I'm really liking how things are going. Also, now that the skirts have been attached, I feel like I have realized why I am liking this look so much. It's a jumper dress. And if you know me and you've been around this channel long enough, you know I love a jumper dress. So I guess this all makes sense. I have pinned up my skirt to the right length now. So I can go ahead and sew that while I'm at the show tonight and tomorrow. I also have to sew the edges of the slits, just do a little whip stitch for a hem there, because right now I'm being poked by pins, but I've already pressed that in place as well. So yeah, this is looking good. So let's talk about how we are doing these sleeve pieces. So right now, what you're looking at is the lower sleeve. I have already folded in a narrow hem on both of the sides over here, and I probably took out about 5/8 inches on both sides with that narrow hem. Now over here, you are seeing little pieces of elastic cut to 1 3/4 inches, and then I kind of tried to melt the ends so that they wouldn't fray and go all over, because elastic tends to do that. These are going to be my loops for my buttons. These are the buttons that I've picked out from my stash. They're little like metal disc buttons, and I'm going to do 8 buttons, 4 on each sleeve, and I'm just going to space them out along the edge here. So one side of this is going to get loops, the other side is going to get buttons. The loops have to be done before the trim goes on. So what's going to happen next is I'm going to stitch down the fold. Right now it's just pressed, but it's staying very nicely in place. I'm going to stitch that down on the machine. Then I'm going to stitch the ribbon, the jacquard ribbon trim down on the machine. Hopefully it will play nice with the machine and it won't, you know, bunch up or anything like that. I haven't actually tested it yet, but my plan is to stitch kind of in these like vertical pieces right here, or from your angle, I suppose they're horizontal, but I'm going to stitch along each side. However, before I can stitch down this edge on the side with the loops are going to get tucked in between the ribbon and the actual sleeve. So they're going to get kind of folded in half like that, and then where they are spaced, I haven't marked them yet, they're going to be laid down like that and then stitched over. So again, the next bit is that I'm just going to stitch this down here, then the loops are going to be marked out and put on one side. Once those are stitched on, then we can stitch the ribbon over the top of that. The ribbon will also just go on the other side, and the buttons will go just on top of the ribbon, just hand sewn on there. I haven't yet quite decided with the top and the bottom, because I haven't decided where I want to use this trim yet. I have enough of this again for one edge. So it can either be the wrist here, the top of this, the bottom of the upper sleeve, or it could go on the velvet sleeve that's going with the puffed sleeve. So I don't know yet. So I think I'm just going to leave these kind of plain and finish them off afterwards. That will also mean that I can kind of tuck the ends of the jacquard ribbon in, though this also does melt pretty nicely for a nice finished edge right there. I've melted this end. But yeah, I feel like I'm going to have to see the sleeve pieces together, like the bottom and the top, to really determine where this is going to go versus where this is going to go horizontally across the top. Because basically, wherever this doesn't go, this is going to go across. And I'm also going to utilize more of this. This is going to outline this again so that it matches the bodice. And then it's also just going to be like the top edge or the outside edge where the ribbon is. I'm not doing both sides of the ribbon, so it will just kind of be stacked on the edge, kind of like that, wherever this trim goes horizontally across the sleeve. All of my edges are nicely hemmed now, and I have just put the loops on. These are little loops of elastic about 1/8 inch wide. And now I can put the ribbon along all of the edges here, or at least along those edges, and then figure out exactly where I want the beaded trim. Also, I've just got to shout out this new iron. I had gotten one of these while I was down at ALA, but it had been sitting in the box and I hadn't turned it on. I finally went to go turn it on and it didn't turn on. And so I contacted Aliso. This is completely not sponsored, by the way. But I contacted them and they sent me a new one and it arrived today. And oh my God, this thing is great. It's not leaving any marks on this fabric, guys. Now, granted, I have only ironed it from the reverse side so far, but it is not leaving any marks on this fabric, which is amazing. And also it lights up when you tilt it so that you can see where you're going. Look, see the light on the fabric there? Isn't that crazy? Yeah, so pretty cool. I'm really liking it. It's a tiny little iron, but it's working just as well. And actually, it's worked really well in like pressing these once I did this seam, because this is the upper arm here. And I sewed the seam first after serging the edges, as you can see there. And then once I sewed it and pressed that seam, then I pressed this part. I'm going to have to figure out how to get the ribbon trim along this curve here, but I know that the beaded trim has to go on first anyway. So it might just be that I have to hand sew the ribbon trim as well, because I think I will have to hand sew this. I mean, maybe I could put it on with a zipper foot, but I have a feeling this might have to be hand sewn. Great news, my pearls and piping foot is just big enough to get over this trim. So I am actually sandwiching the beaded trim in between the jacquard ribbon and like the sleeve itself. And I'm able to sew this just with my machine. And the thread is blending in so well. I'm using a navy blue thread that I literally can't tell where I started, but I think I'm just about there. Look how pretty this looks. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. That is gorgeous. I did have to take a little hop and kind of reposition my needle here because pearls and piping foot can't really go around a corner, but that looks fabulous. Now here's an idea. Should I put it midway through the sleeve? The only problem is I wouldn't be able to like echo that up here, because that would be really fun if I had enough to go also midway through there. But I could put it midway through here, kind of get an extra horizontal stripy thing going on, which I feel like happened a lot in these sleeves, and switch things up a bit with, you know, the jacquard trim. That's an interesting idea. And then I could add more beading with the narrow blue beaded trim, so that again is going alongside that. That might be really pretty. Okay, that's a front runner for sure. The sleeves are looking really, really awesome, the fitted sleeves. So basically I've got my horizontal trims on the edges on both sleeves, and now I'm just trying to figure out what else to do. I was kind of looking at it with my mom over a video call of like, should I use the beaded trim that I was planning to use to, you know, go across partway through the sleeve. She wasn't really loving it. Honestly, I'm not sure I'm loving it either. It does feel kind of darker and heavy. It's hard because it's like, I would like to see this with the neckline so that it's all together. But these don't connect. And right now they can't connect because I haven't done any of the rings to be able to lace them together yet. So maybe that's what I should do next, is I should put the lacing rings on. However, I was kind of thinking about doing that this weekend at the show because these are easy to bring to the show in little pieces. And those are just like easy things to hand sew there because obviously that's hand sewn. This is all machine sewn, by the way. I was able to do everything with my pearls and piping foot or just the regular foot for like this edge. But the other option that I was thinking about was maybe to do a couple more of the strips of this narrow trim, the ribbon trim, going across so that it kind of like divides it up maybe a little bit more like that. I don't know if I would also want to do that on the top or if I would just leave the top as is and then just do this. I kind of like the look of that. I also don't know if I would then want to edge that with more of the beaded trim. However, this is how much beaded trim I have left. So if I want to add beaded trim basically anywhere else, I need to get another package. It comes at 3-yard packages, unfortunately. Like, it's not that it's that expensive. I mean, I think it's like $8 or $9, but it's just, you know, you don't get a lot. It doesn't seem to go very far because I basically used up one package just for these sleeve pieces right here. This is, I think, exactly enough left that I could do a vertical on one side. I don't think I'd want to do it on both sides anyway because it would get in the way of the buttons. If I do it at all, it would be on the loop side here, not on the button side, so that it wouldn't get in the way of the buttons coming up. But I don't know that I want it at all. I know that I want the ribbon to go over here, but I can't put that on until I decide what's happening here because these ones get tucked under. I suppose I could do the edge of the ribbon and just like leave little openings of where that might go. But I do kind of think that this spacing here does make sense if I'm doing the narrower ribbon. So I could totally do that. And I think that would be very pretty. But I think what I'm going to do while I'm still kind of questioning all of this is I'm going to switch to the puffed sleeve. Now I have something to tell you about the puff sleeve. So we have already done the mock-up and everything for the puff sleeve. I've already cut them out. They are what they are. However, I realized yesterday as I was editing last week's video and looking at more portraiture that I figured out basically how the upper portion of the puff sleeve frequently, not always, but frequently comes together with the lower portion of the puff sleeve. And that is what we can see right here. It's this sort of like accordion pleat ruffle. Frankly, I think they're cartridge pleats actually, but it's like cartridge pleated into kind of a ruffle at the bottom of the sleeve that then the lower sleeve fits underneath and into. And it looks so pretty. But unfortunately, I don't think I cut my sleeves long enough to be able to do that. I'm tempted to try, like maybe if I face it with, you know, a bias tape or just something. I suppose I have enough fabric left where I probably could do a facing. And if I face it, then maybe I could get away with doing that and just still using like the seam allowance that I had already kind of, you know, banked on taking away from the bottom of that sleeve, because it's really cool, I feel like, and I don't know exactly how it's done. My best guess as to how this is accomplished is that it is cartridge pleated, and it's cartridge pleated to an internal band that is like whipped into place, because that's what you kind of have to do with cartridge pleats, is that you're taking one stitch into each of the inner pleats and that is whipped to that band. And I think it looks really cool, but is that worth the extra effort that all of that would take as opposed to just like gathering it into a little band? Maybe. I mean, looking at how much fabric I have left, knowing that I do also want to have enough for a headpiece. I mean, we don't have a full width yet. No, I don't know. I would have to piece that so hard to be able to do just a facing to the bottom of that, even like a 3-inch wide facing or something. I think that's not going to be able to happen. And frankly, even at that point, I still don't have enough length because I have enough length for the sleeve, but not to create like a whole additional ruffle underneath. So unfortunately, I think we're gonna have to forego this really cool cartridge pleated detail that they did sometimes. Again, it's not all the times, and we see so many different types of really embellished or also just plain puffed sleeves in gowns of this era. So I think mine's gonna be a plain kind. I probably do have enough width where I could do like a double puff and run in another row of gathering stitches in the middle of that. I don't know if I want to. I think what I'm going to do is I will mark where that would go from like the inside where a second row of stitching would go if I wanted to have another gathering point midway through. I'll mark it on the inside and then I will gather it up from the outside, and really I guess I'll mark it on the inside of the flat lining because I am flat lining this with organdy. I think I mentioned that. But then I will gather it up top and bottom and then see if it would want that additional row of gathering, which at least if I already have it marked, it'll be easy to add that in there. But I am going to start with flatlining this to the organdy using my serger, and then I'm going to mark that midway line on the organdy. I'm going to seam up the underarm seam, and then I'll run the gathering stitches around the top and around the bottom, pull them up, see what that's looking like, and see if I want to add that third row of gathering in the middle. I also don't know what/if embellishment this is getting. I still don't have the velvet in that I ordered from Fabric Wholesale Direct. I'm not sure when that's coming. I think I mentioned this, I don't remember if it was this video or last video, probably last video, that whenever I've ordered from Fabric Wholesale Direct in the past, it's been like the world's slowest shipping. So that may not get here for a while yet, unfortunately, which means that of course it's hard to play with trims, because if I don't use this for the fitted sleeve, I could also use it on the lower part of the puffed sleeve. So we've got some options. Well, that's annoying. I just looked on Amazon to see if I could get more of the blue beaded trim like in the next couple of days. No, it's Tuesday right now. It would not get here until Monday next week. Every single time I've ordered it, the shipping has taken longer than the last time, except that last time it was like 4 days, not almost an entire week. So that's annoying because I'm looking at the sleeves now, like the lower portion of sleeve, and frankly, layering the two of these on the sleeve is just so pretty. I just feel like it adds so much depth and texture, etc. to these sleeves, and so I really feel like if I do the narrow bands going across, that I kind of would want to edge them with the beaded trim as well. But that means that I can't do that until at least Monday, if not Tuesday next week. And I had kind of wanted to finish up the majority of this project this week. Like everything except what I can't do because I don't have the Fabric Wholesale Direct order. So, I mean, it's a small thing. Like, it's literally just the decorations on the lower sleeve that would be remaining. But I really wanted to do more of that this week. So personally, I'm really liking the look of the really full sleeve. So I don't think I'm going to put that extra gathering stitch in there. I did mark it. I could put it in if I so choose. And maybe I will once I have the lower sleeve. But that just looks so pretty and like princessy to me, and I'm loving the way that the color shift sort of plays with all of the poofs and the pleats on the skirt, etc. So yeah, I'm really happy with that right now. So we're gonna leave that as is, and so that means that the next step is I'm going to measure the arm's eye and I'm going to cut a strip, probably bias strip, because this is still like a curve that it has to go into, but maybe I'll do it straight grain. I have to play around with that. And I'm going to cut a strip, regardless, bias or straight, that is the length of each arm's eye. And I'm going to use that to bind the gathering on the upper sleeve. And then I still have to figure out how the binding is going to work on the lower part of the sleeve or on, the hem of the upper sleeve. But it's probably going to be like a straight strip that is used to bind off the gathering down here as well. And then I have to figure out if the lower velvet sleeve is going to be fully attached in, or if I'm going to use the lacing rings, just like I'm planning to on the fitted sleeves. I think I'm going to do lacing rings, but we shall see. So I have cut some 2-inch wide strips here, and these are all on the straight grain, but I am going to be treating these kind of like double fold bias tape, and I've cut longer ones for the arm's eyes, to go into the arm's eyes for the top of the puff sleeve, and then I've cut shorter ones that will be the bottom towards the elbow. And so now I am going to put these right sides together with the appropriate end of the puffed sleeve and then turn them. The top one, again, I am for sure treating like double fold, so you're going to actually see it on the exterior and then it will kind of like fit under the sleeve and be able to be whipped in this top section here in the arm's eye. The bottom one I may wind up treating more like a single fold. I have to kind of see how it looks first, but if I do it as a single fold, basically you won't see this from the outside. If I do it as a double fold, you see the little fold of it about a 1/2 inch wide. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pin and sew those in place on the puffed sleeves and turn them. If it's double fold, I can stitch in the ditch. If it's single fold, then I have to hand sew the inside of that so that no stitches show on the outside. But I'm going to prep all of those, sew all those together, etc. And also, according to the tracking for my Fabric Wholesale Direct order, it looks like I might be getting that today. Either today or tomorrow, I'm hopeful, because it is like in 2 towns over, basically. So I'm hoping it'll come today. We'll see. But that would mean that I could figure out how this incorporates down with the lower sleeve as well, which would be really great. My Fabric Wholesale Direct order has just come in and I've got my voile, which I have to admit, I questioned, just based on the feeling of this, I questioned whether this was cotton, because to me it feels so smooth that it feels like polyester. So I actually snipped off this tiny little corner right here and I burn tested it and it's cotton. How about it? So yeah, it burned like cotton does. It did not create a hard bead or anything like that like you get with polyester. I also got the yard of the blue velvet, so that will be perfect for those lower sleeves. I do feel like this may be a very, very slightly different dye lot than I had with my swatch, because it just feels like it is the tiniest bit brighter than the swatch, but frankly it's still close enough that it should be totally fine. So I just have to figure out what exactly I'm doing with these lower sleeves. But in the meantime, I'm in the process of sewing the bands onto the puffs. So I'm going to keep going with that, and I'm going to go throw this in the laundry so that I can make a chemise out of it. It is sheerer than I expected. Like, they show you videos and everything on their site about what a fabric looks like, but they didn't show it with the white. I think it was pink or something like that, and it didn't look this sheer. I think this will be lovely, but I might have to figure out something for this area right here. Both of the sleeves now have their binding done on both top and bottom. So these are ready to be really probably whip stitched into the shoulder. I haven't decided if I'll do like rings with these, which would make them a little bit, you know, easier to detach, like if I get too warm at the Ren Fair or something like that. But I really feel like normally you see these partially sewn in, and so I would just like whip them in to the arm's eye here with really big stitches that are able to be undone really easily, and then they would just be like free underneath. So yeah, I think I'll leave that for now. I've got a tiny bit of the hem left to hand, so I'm going to finish that off. I also have to finish off the little bit of the edges here on the opening that have to be whipped stitched in place. But other than that kind of smaller hand sewing, I think it's time to move on to the lower velvet sleeves. So I am patterning the velvet lower sleeve right now, and I'm doing it off of the other lower sleeve, but it needs to be longer because it is going to meet up with the upper sleeve, with the upper puffed sleeve, instead of have that gap. It also needs to be a little bit wider, A, because I want it a tiny bit looser, and B, because it doesn't have the gap with the buttons. So I've extended over here and over here by 7/8 of an inch. This is just seam allowance down here, just 1/2 inch. And then this is 2.5 inches, increasing it 2 inches plus seam allowance up here. This is a cotton sateen. I think it's a sateen. It might be like just a lightweight cotton, but I'm using that as my liner, and now I'm going to cut the same out of the velvet, and then we'll take a look at trimming. So I am attempting something, and I don't actually know if this will work, but basically I have seamed together each side, the inner and outer sides of the lower sleeve with the velvet. And now I am putting them together, or I have put this one together, and I've sewn around the upper edge and the lower edge. And when I seamed the sides, I left a hole in the middle of the lining right here. And we're gonna see if I physicsed this right, to see if this can now be turned right side out by pulling this through. And that way I just have a tiny little hole that is like not obvious at all in the lining that I can just whip stitch. It's been a while since I've tried something like this, so I don't remember if this is actually a way that we can do this, but I think it is. So these are obviously bag lined, not flat lined as I would often do. Yeah, nope, that is not how this works. Okay, well, that's why I only did one, because this was an experiment. I thought I remembered a way to do it like that, but I think we do have to turn it through an end, not through the middle, because otherwise we get this, which, you know, doesn't do anything for us. So I'm going to seam rip one end of this and do this the normal way. Honestly, I didn't even need to do this because there's trim that's going to go around the bottom edge or going to go over the bottom edge, so I can top stitch the bottom and it doesn't matter because trim's covering it. So yeah, that did not work. Don't do it like this. So I have my trim all pinned in place here, ready to be hand sewn on, because of course when I use the two in combo, we cannot use the pearls and piping foot, we have to hand sew this. However, this is the remainder of the Amazon beaded trim. The rest of it's not coming until Sunday. So that means that I can only put it on one sleeve for now. We still can't finish the lower sleeves because those need to have the additional horizontal bands of trim on there, and those are edged with the beaded trim. I really hope that I only need one more package of the beaded trim. I'm almost tempted to order a second one just in case, because my goal is to have this completely finished, including the camicia. One of you told me how to pronounce that, and I'm still doing it wrong. So the chemise, I'm hoping to have everything, including the chemise, completely finished by the end of next week's video. And we will have almost everything finished, I think, this week, with the exception of the chemise and what we can't do because of not having the beaded trim until Sunday, which is the last day of this video. And knowing Amazon and its shipping, it's gonna come at like 10 p.m. on Sunday, so it will come after this video. So actually, I might go ahead and just do a rough measurement calculation to make sure that I can get everything else done with just 3 yards of the beaded trim. I think it will work, considering how far it went to the whole rest of like the decorative sleeve pieces, and considering I need 2 more bands across. Ooh, now that I'm saying that, as I'm saying it, I'm literally like, that might not be enough. I might have to place another order, and who knows how long that one will take because each one's taking longer. But I'm going to bring this with me backstage tonight. I'm also going to bring all of these sleeve pieces backstage, actually including these, so that I can put the silver rings onto everything, because I think that what I'm going to do with these two is to have multiple rings kind of on the inside, because I feel like that makes more sense than whip stitching these together. And that way I could use these two, I could use, you know, these two together. I have flexibility in that. So I think that's what I'm gonna do, but this part will still be whip stitched into the top of the arm's eye when I wear the puffed sleeves. So yeah, lots of silver rings to put on. I've already put 2 on the bodice, but I have a lot more to go. Well, it is now Monday, and guess whose Amazon order is still not here? Yeah, still no beaded trim. So obviously we are not going to be finishing all of the sleeve pieces in this video because we don't have the beaded trim to finish it. However, I have done everything that I can at this point without the beaded trim, or just about. So basically, one lower sleeve has all of the trim applied here. You can see it all on both sides. It's hand stitched on. And I also have, I think, almost all my lacing rings at the top. I decided for these ones I'm going to do 4. We'll see how it goes. Right now I have put 3 of the 4 on. So I have 1 more lacing ring to go on there. I have put all of my lacing rings on these sleeve pieces, both the uppers and also the lowers, but obviously the lowers are waiting on a lot of the beaded trim to get here. In fact, I did do the math, and basically I should have enough beaded trim in one additional package, the one that's who knows where it is, that was supposed to have already arrived. I should have enough in that one package to finish everything that I want to do, but it's close. Like, we're talking within 5 inches close. So I actually placed another order for another package of the trim as well. That's supposed to arrive on Wednesday, but of course everything from Amazon lately has been super delayed, so who knows when it will actually get here. But that way, just in case, I won't have to be waiting like a full other week to get more of the beaded trim. As far as the upper sleeves go, these I haven't put any rings onto yet, but my plan is to put 4 of the lacing rings kind of on the inside of this so that these ones here can just like fit inside of there and be a little bit easier to remove. But I do still think with the tops, I am probably not going to use rings. I'm probably going to whip stitch that into place. I might kind of experiment with it and see like, okay, if it was only fastened in, you know, say 3 or 4 places around the arm's eye into the rings that already exist on the bodice, what would that look like? But I do feel like the rings aren't going to be enough for the upper situation, but they should be okay for the lower. So that's where we're at right now. The other sleeve is still in pieces, but it just needs to be combined together, and then that's all I can do with it until I have the beaded trim. So we're kind of in a stall here, but I did as much as I could this weekend, which was really just hand sewing because we had 4 shows. So I had everything with me in the green room, and I was basically sewing on rings and sewing on this trim during the show all weekend. So anyway, I'm really hopeful that I can finish everything off in next week's video, because other than the beaded trim of it all, applying all of that when that gets here, and doing those last few lacing rings that I still need to do, we've got the chemise, and that's it. And that should be relatively easy. I've looked at some diagrams online. We shouldn't need an actual pattern for that because it's really all rectangles. So that should go together pretty well, and then the entire ensemble will be done. I do kind of have to figure out headpiece situation, but because of packing for Ireland, I think it's going to be really pretty minimal. And so I don't know that there will be really like a formal headpiece to this outfit, just because I can't pack one. And really at the Ren Fair, I tend to want to wear hats anyway because it's sunny. So we'll see what happens with that, but that will probably be later, closer to the actual Ren Fair. So yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully you have been enjoying this project so far. If you did like this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube at least once a week, usually with sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays, and sometimes with additional costuming or sewing related content, especially shorts, out on Saturdays. But I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks or join my YouTube channel memberships right here on YouTube below the video. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Jean and Kim. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!